Sorry, I gotta do this. There we go.
Nice.
Hello. So, John, what were you saying about the mute function?
Oh, I was saying if anybody wants, there's the mute little button on the left of the screen. If you really need to, like, you know, you can just hit that mute and then you can do whatever you want. I have rampant gas, so I might be on. All that fa these guys are feeding me.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
What just happened?
I don't know.
I got you.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
We lose some audio.
I don't know. I think I've got everyone.
I think he froze.
Oh yeah.
I think he froze.
I
can hear him talking
from
from the other room. I hope he froze.
I've got a direct view of him. If we want it, we can see for sure if he's talking or not.
There we go.
Okay. Anyways.
Yeah, Parker, why don't you introduce everyone?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Parker Millsap. I am a songwriter and recording artist, if you will. I'm in the studio with Jon Agnello. He's not on the call right now because he froze, but also I got with me right here Daniel Foulks. He's putting violin and fiddle both on the record. We've been cutting some strings today. We got Jon Grau, my manager. We got Tim Duggan, who is in the studio filming some content for us today. We've got Jon Agnello. There he is. He's producing, running Pro Tools and getting sounds and tweaking on delays. We got Rolff. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your last name. Zwiep.
That's all right. I don't either.
Rolff Zwiep,
I've had it on my
studio
week.
manager. Studio manager here at Blackbird Studios. Who else we got here? We got Ryan Connors, who played all kinds of keyboards and organs and synthesizers on the record. We got David Macias, who is everything. He's he runs 30 Tigers, which is my record label / distribution company, and he's responsible for all of us being here today. And then we got Stuart Lerner,
better or for worse,
who likes to give Jon Agnello a real hard time, and vice versa.
Yes. You just wait.
Very well done, Parker.
So you guys are all in the studio now, and have you finished tracking?
We have done basic tracking. Yes, we've got 14 songs in Pro Tools, full band. Now we're just adding the sauce and the vocals.
Excellent. And is Jon behaving?
Not really.
He's been a pleasure. He's been wonderful.
Didn't he stab the drummer? Or am I crazy?
Oh, yeah, he did stab Matt with scissors.
I thought it would be. I thought it would be good for the press on the record if there was an incident where I stabbed the drummer when he has to do a cowbell overdub. Perfect.
Controversy.
Press.
Awesome. You can start charging more after all that press.
Yeah, the first stabbing is free. That
I hope you guys know
that,
that Jon was so psyched for this record that he drove from North Carolina up to New Jersey to get some fucking pedals.
Yeah.
like oh, by the way, there are no pedals in Nashville. and a cheap Jerry Jones sitar that I hope you use everywhere, and you probably won't use it all.
No, it's gonna be on a track. We haven't laid it down yet.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Using
before.
it. Well, we were using it in basic tracking. And they were like, for the basic track, it needs an acoustic, but it's gonna get there. It's gonna go on there. We'll probably do it like.
Have you guys gone next door to the rental department and looked at the pedals?
Oh
in there?
yeah.
Amazing.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. And yesterday we got to go or was it 2 days ago? we got to go into the Atmos room and listen to a little bit of music on the Atmos system here at Blackbird, and it's something else. Yeah.
I'm glad you got to experience that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Everybody should have a chance at that.
Yeah.
So you guys have an Atmos room down there?
Yes.
Wow.
Not just any Atmos room. I promise you that.
Yeah.
So when
that-
you're
You
here,
know.
you must come here. It's as much seeing as it is hearing as well. So,
Yeah.
but it's pretty phenomenal experience, really.
So it's a listening room, not a studio, right?
It's a mix and reference room.
Got it.
So they actively are mixing in there as well as going in for playback and reference.
And how many speakers is it? Because it's like
There's
30
20
plus, right?
21 drivers.
21.
Total.
Wow.
It's a 9.1.6 room is the configuration. So there's 9 drivers at ear level. It's all ATC monitoring. There's 6 up above that do sort of the top of the dome, if you will. And then there's 6 LFEs, or just low frequency subwoofers. In other words, there's 4 across the front and 2 left and right, 1 for each side in the back.
I mean, we in high school, I remember the Flaming Lips put out a record where it came on like 5 different CDs, and you had to like wire together 5 different stereo systems to listen to it properly. We thought that was cool.
I don't know about it. Man, I got to look that up. I got to find out
Oh,
about
dude, that
that.
would be
Eureka.
amazing
I
on
think
the
that's
Atmos.
Eureka. The record's called
Yeah,
Eureka.
exactly.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
it.
You know, it was a really
gotta
cool
check that out.
concept. It just required like some knowledge of like how do we wire together a bunch of stereo systems.
And we all got to hit play at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, really? So the instructions came with the record?
Yeah.
That's great. I got to check it. It's Eureka?
Mhm.
Eureka.
Yeah.
With the Z.
Yeah.
But-
So when we were in the Atmos room, you guys played us Rocket Man.
Yeah.
And when the chorus hit with the ooze and the acoustics and all that,
Oh,
like so many
good.
fluids left my body.
So good, yeah.
It sounded like I couldn't believe what I was hearing, you know, and I've heard that record since it came out. I love that record as a kid. It was insane. I've never heard anything. Have you, Stuart, have you ever been in an Atmos room like
Yeah,
that? or-
there's one down on the Lower East Side. And it was like I walked in, I listened to it, it sounded great, but I couldn't process how this is gonna like feature into my life in any way, you know?
Right.
But I wonder, and maybe this is a question for David as well, is like, who's picking the content that's getting mixed in there? Is it like just very famous artists or like these classic records?
What do you mean as far as what's getting mixed in where?
In Atmos, like,
I have no idea. I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
I can talk a little bit about it if you'd like.
Yeah.
There's a UMG is kind of actually ultimately Dolby is pushing the technology. Obviously, it's their baby, and UMG is getting way behind it just because they've got such a wide variety of artists and their whole list of people that they can access, and artists from history all the way up to current stuff. So the goal was to try to get a good mix of genre over a spread of a couple of thousand tracks to initially launch it and get everybody interested in it. And now they're trying to push it more and more toward, well, of course, obviously film, soundtracks, stuff like that, gaming, but also, believe it or not, we've had some country artists in here who are purpose recording their new projects for Atmos. And, obviously it's going to come out in a 2.1 version, but they're actively recording it that way with that intention of releasing it. And I think really the ultimate goal is headphones. And believe it or not, they're almost to the point where they can simulate this technology in a 2-channel playback in just two speakers on your ears.
Wow.
Even down to earbuds. So it's pretty phenomenal technology. And that's, I don't even know the technology or the terminology, I guess you'd say, of how they're getting it to the headphones. It's science.
Yeah,
as far
I
as
was
I'm
going to ask,
concerned,
how does
you
that
know?
work? But I don't think I would understand it anyways.
Yeah.
Lots of computers.
It's pretty cool, and it's the interest and the motivation and the push behind it is increasing all the time. So we wanted to be in the forefront of that technology, so we committed to it. We talked to Dolby, or actually Dolby approached us and said, would you be interested in this? And we said, of course. And it was a very natural move for that particular room, for Studio C here, which had been for years, had been a surround room that George Massenburg had designed. It was a 5.1 surround system, which still is available. There's a preset for that, and you can go back to surround if you'd like. But at some point, we went back to a 5.1 playback after listening to an immersive track, a number of them, and we just kind of went, yeah, that's all right. It was so impressive of what the immersive technology does.
And what is the software that you mix in?
It's Pro Tools. It's actually it's two Pro Tools systems. One runs the Atmos system. The other one is Pro Tools, and then there's a renderer that records and saves the tracks, the files. And there's different levels of files too. So there's actually, like, it goes to an MT4, and as I understand it, that is the technology where you can play it back on some of these simulators. Like Amazon has an Echo Studio, which is an Atmos simulator, and it has Atmos technology in it, and you can put it in a room by itself. It looks like an oversized one of those Alexa speakers, and it has a number of drivers in it, and it has sensors, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better description, where it kind of reads where it is in a room and where the reflection in the room is, and simulates that immersive playback. It's pretty impressive coming from a thing about the size of a coffee can, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think about, like, as a manager and someone who's had the fortunate, luck of being in the studio when people, record their music, and hearing playback in the studio, and hearing records the way I would say they're supposed to sound, you know what I mean? And to be able to bring that experience to fans who are used to maybe just listening on their laptop or in earbuds. And I mean, it's a different music. It's totally a different experience when you can actually hear the placement of different instruments, in this sort of field. So that's exciting that's coming down the pipeline.
The engineers who do this have to be really careful too, and they're entrusted to be, to use taste and not just get too wild with it, and blasting stuff all over the place. It's more, a lot of the stuff just is more of an environmental thing where you're absorbed, you're immersed in the immersive system, and you're experiencing the performance, if you're right there.
Listening to Rocket Man, it was kind of like you're on stage while the band's performing with the most fidelity possible.
And what's fun about that is that is sort of the go-to track for everybody. They hear Rocket Man, and that's like, everybody says, oh, did you hear Rocket Man? But there's so many other tracks now available that will just blow you away. You think Rocket Man's amazing. Some of the other stuff, they've been messing around with some hard rock stuff, and I would love to hear something like Dark Side of the Moon in there, but as far as I know, it hasn't been, Atmos has not been applied to that yet. So remember what that sounded like. You guys probably remember what that sounded like in Quad, which blew everybody away, But
are there any classical recordings?
There are.
Or jazz stuff, or anything like that?
Yeah, there are. Yeah. And I think we've got a few on the hard drive in there if you guys are interested in going back and listening.
Very cool.
Wow.
Cool.
So it's everything. It's all.
I gotta take a break, guys. I'll be right back.
We can hold you to it. This is recorded. We've got it. We've got evidence.
Family emergency. I'll be back in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
He's got to go get some more pedals.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine with what's going on now, and probably, I guess you guys are making music, you're in the studio together, but most of the business is kind of like in a halting position, that bringing up old catalog stuff and having a new concept for it is probably timely.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, people are still, people are, they're putting music out. Music is, I mean, we're selling and streaming, quite a bit of music. Our business is really, if anything, is actually even up a little bit. But people are, your point about catalog is very astute. I think as people are kind of home and they're, looking for things that are comforting and familiar, you're seeing a lot more catalog. Catalog is done, incredibly well. And so, and I think people, if they can listen to it and, have even a better experience, a better listening experience, with this new technology, then that's going to bring them, bring them around even more. So that's, it's exciting. I know Sony's got something called something that, and I'm not sure how it compares, because again, whenever it comes to sound issues, I'm the wrong guy to speak about with any authority whatsoever. I came out of the retail world. I sold Brooks and Dunn records to Walmart. That's how I came up. So, but I did get a test on the Sony 360 system, and it did sound very impressive. I don't know, Rolff, if you've heard both.
I did. We actually had the touring rig of it, a demo here that set it up in the same room prior to the room being the Atmos room, and it's fantastic. You're right. It's mind blowing. Yeah, in a very similar way. And truth be known, Sony has the headphone thing down now, and they had it down back then when they tried, or when they brought it in and demoed it to us, and it was to the point of where you had the headphones on and you took them off thinking that the speakers were actually on in the room. You couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So they've definitely got it. Is that what did they give you the headphones too?
Yes. I want those.
It's fantastic. I know it's unbelievable that's just two speakers. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So how does it work? But it's just two speakers. Is it like there's multiple drivers or?
No, it's just two speakers, and it's that's why I was saying earlier. It's like it's science. Some of it has to do with phase and compression and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Come on, that's not science, that's magic.
They get 8 CDs. They get 8 CDs, and you have to start them all at the same time.
Yes.
Funny.
That's originally how flanging started. It's true, because you basically started one machine, two machines, and you very sped the speed of the second machine recording on a third machine. And that's how you got so that's 1969, like Itchy Park and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's come full circle, guys. Except now it's like 200 variations as opposed to two. No, but Blackbird's been great. We tracked it Omni, and we moved it Blackbird for like 8 days of overdubs, and it's fantastic. The John McBride was I told him that I had a U48 we were using, and he was like, he just said, he's like, yeah, U48s are great. The great thing about U48s is everybody uses the 47s, nobody uses the 48s, and that means that they work better because they get less use. Just like, that makes sense.
Very true.
Is that your Russian one? The one?
Yes, I told these guys about our friend Alexei or whatever. What was his name?
I forget. Stanislav or something.
What did he smell like?
Borscht.
So, really quick, in the 90s, some guy appeared on our wavelength, and he was basically like importing microphone parts from Russia to the States and then putting them back together and selling them like old tube mics, like the Billie Holiday 48s and C24s. So me and Stuart had to come over one day and line up like 8 of them, right? How many did he have?
We bought he had a lot, but we bought a bunch. But what he was doing, he was basically bringing them here to sell, but he didn't want to go through customs, and he was doing, it was like a drug deal kind of.
Black market.
John and I were excited, but he basically took everything apart so that nobody knew he was bringing them into the country. And,
oh, wow.
And he had a lot of them. And
black market microphones.
It sounds like scene from Taxi Driver. With the guns.
They were classic. They were classic microphones, like U47s. And
oh yeah,
48s.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's
It's
crazy.
a great sounding microphone.
We've been using it on your vocal. Yeah, no, it's and the great thing about cutting tracks was
There it is.
on the second song, I turned around to the assistant and I said, you know what? Fuck that SM7. Let's put up the 2 because he was so, you know, the live vocal sounded great. And I was like, we can keep some of these, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm glad we switched over. I mean, and now at least it's consistent. If I want to grab something from a live vocal from you, I can put it in, you know what I mean? It's not like night and day.
Yep.
So it's handy. But no, it's been great.
Cool.
It's been great.
Yeah, that's
It's
great.
been really fun.
What's the rest of the chain? What's the rest of after the 48? What are you running it through?
So you're gonna hate me, but I'm running it through.
I do already.
Well, you should. I'm running it through my daking chain because I just like that, and I used it on the bass, and there's a fullness on it. So I basically did a bunch of A-Bing, and I ended up on the daking, and so I have the mic pre, I have the equalizer and the compressor, and then I'm running the guitar amps through your Neves, stuff like that. So, you know, we're doing all kinds of different overdubs, but the vocal thing just worked.
Yeah, you brought a lot of really cool stuff with you too, and we don't have those 500 series daking modules. So if you love them, you know, there's nothing like them.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like I said, I am that guy in high school, you know, person most likely to bring too much equipment to the recording session in the studio that has all the gear in the world. But that's me.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
All good.
No Big Muff though.
That's great.
I can't find my fucking Big Muff.
Oh, tell me.
Might be
need
here,
one?
John.
Really?
It might be. I got a couple of them.
Is it a Russian one?
Come on, drive up. Drive up.
At least we got to hang out for 5 minutes.
Fucking lunatic. No, seriously,
Did they
guys,
not-
really appreciate what he did. He was so excited. And he did it in one day, too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Raleigh, New Jersey, Raleigh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and then just getting here was a harrowing event in the days leading up to the
yeah.
it was it was crazy.
The whole so
Tell 'em.
so for anybody that hasn't already heard this story, me and the band have been rehearsing at my house. And we rehearsed for about a month and a half, like every few days we'd get together and nobody left their house or anything. But then about 3 days before we're supposed to record, the bass player said, hey, a friend of mine who I helped build a deck with the other day, we were outside the whole time, but he tested positive for coronavirus. So we all scrambled and got tested. It all came back negative, but the test took so long to come back, we had to push back recording 2 days, 3 days.
We pushed it back 2 days at first and then kept being like, okay, when are the tests coming in? When are the tests coming in? When are the tests coming in? And like Monday rolled around and we had to push it back another day. And then Tuesday came around and we still didn't have our tests back, but John was sort of like, whatever, I'm driving into town and we'll figure it out. That night, tests started rolling in. Like we were sitting on Parker's porch when his test results came in negative.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it was every record comes with its challenges from all sorts of different, perspectives, but this was a totally unique.
That was the most stressful part about this record. Everything else about this record has been fun and easy.
Well, also though, both studios, Omni and Blackbird, were very nice about letting us push back because it was which I was. I was on just getting the phone calls and
we were just desperate. We didn't have any other bookings. So it's pretty weird it's pretty weird how this whole pandemic thing has just cleared stuff out. It's just now coming back, and we're really grateful for that. Like,
Rolff, how did you decide to open up? Like, have you been open the whole time?
No, we weren't. We were actually shut down and just like itching to get back, of course. So May 11, we opened back up very slowly. We had a couple of overdub sessions going on where we had just an engineer and a vocalist in a room. And we just said, all right, let's just figure this out, see how we're going to have to approach this with a small scale session. And then we had another thing come in. I think it was 2 vocalists and a producer and an engineer, and kind of approach it the same way. And then just, by wiping everything down, we started saying there's got to be a better way. And we discovered, UV technology, the ultraviolet lights. So we've got our chief engineer who's a whiz at slamming interesting, crazy projects together. There you go. That's what John's holding up there is one of our UV wands. And they are kind of the low tech of compared to these high tech things we have. Our chief tech had some leftover tape machine stands, like the 2 tracks used to come on, the 2 wheels on each side. And he said he had some leftover. He used to work for Studer, and he had them in his workshop at home, and he built these wooden frames on top of them and attached these UV bulbs and sockets to them. And they're powerful as hell. I mean, you can't go in the room while they're on. He's got a remote control on it. And you have to have UV goggles on when you
we need those for live shows, but instead of strobes, you just blast the crowd with the UV. Make it safe for everyone.
It's crazy. But it's not real bright light. It's like this blue glow, but the radiation that it gives off will give you a tan. I mean,
get everyone in little goggles at the concerts.
Yeah. So it's like how a welder, if you look at a welder without protection of your eyes, it'll burn your eyes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that kind of stuff that happens. So anyway, that after every session in the evenings, our night shift goes in there, and besides striking the room, they'll push that up to the console and the outboard gear, and then they put it out in the tracking rooms. And we've got, I don't know if anybody's familiar with our Q stations. They're like Mackie 1604s in these boxes, and everybody gets a little mixer for their Q mix. So we put those in a circle and put the UV light in the middle of that and shine on those things. So
wow.
For a 30 to 60 minute treatment, it's supposed to kill everything. And we've got these cards that we're going to test and make sure it's getting everything, that they turn color after a certain period of time, make sure that they're effective. So.
And like, for instance, you guys are staying in one room. No one's coming in. You're preset. You're locked out.
Right.
Yeah.
It feels pretty isolated, despite the fact that it's us together. We've all been isolated. We all took the test and tested negative. So having all of us in a room together feels, about as safe as you can possibly feel given the climate. And it's nice just because it's a great time to be creative. There aren't any distractions. We obviously can't have the band on the road. So being able to get into the studio is just about the best thing possible. We were fortunate enough to already have been planning on it this year.
Yeah.
We hadn't thought about really going on the road much. So we got kind of lucky in that, in that sense, but really glad to be in here.
So great. Is Nashville, is it opened at stage 2, whatever they call that?
They just announced stage 3 today will be on Monday.
And what is stage 3?
Stage 2 was where you could have 25 or less people in a room together. Stage 1 was groups of 10 or less. And it's a matter of fact, I was just before this podcast, I was studying the new phase 3. I was actually looking for the literature on it on the Nashville government website, and I'm not 100% sure of all the details, but
is stage 3?
We're thrilled we're moving forward.
Is stage 3 where we can go back into Kid Rock's bar and?
Oh shit! They were doing that already.
Yeah. They just got serious citations slapped on them. I saw a photo from a week ago where it was a packed house. It looked as if it was a normal Saturday.
Well, if they just did a foam party style night, and then
really?
it's all disinfected,
yeah, it's all sanitizer.
It might work out. Yeah.
Wow.
Great.
That's an idea for everybody. $1 million idea. You can take it and run with it.
Right.
Yeah. Sanitizer foam party with the UV strobes.
but stage 3 will not allow for live performance.
It is. Yes, it will.
Is.
Yeah.
Phase 2 was that you could have 2 people on stage, and what was it? 50% occupancy in the room of capacity. something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
what I've been
right.
seeing anyway is no ticketed shows. Like no one's playing a headline concert, but the restaurants that have been opening up, if they've got a stage, I'll see they'll have bands playing on the stage.
Like a full band?
I think they're not supposed to be, but yeah.
Yeah.
And this is all online. Like I'm not in there. I haven't seen it in person, but
Right.
But yeah, I think that no one's selling tickets for a show yet. Although I guess some people have started to announce that. But yeah,
I think phase 3 will open that up, and the
Yeah.
capability of more people allowed, because you weren't allowed to go sit at a bar. Now, if it's phase 3, they can have like 50% of seating at the bar.
Mhm.
And you can't stand at the bar was one thing I saw too. I don't know what that means.
Interesting.
I'm sure it's all going to work out exactly like it's laid out.
But I will say, being down here, it is a good time to make a record. Well, I mean, this is the first record I've ever made down in Nashville, first of all, so let me just say that.
Really?
But it's a good time because everybody's super focused and everybody goes home. And like we come back and we start at 10:30 every day, and there's a lot of focus. There's not a lot of distractions at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's
Except
really,
that there's a pandemic going on.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
no, but the good news is I'm in the studio. I'm not on Twitter, so I'm in my happy space.
Yeah,
go.
I was gonna
There you
say it's really nice to be focused on something that's not the news, and having like a reason to not focus on the news all day has been really uplifting the past week and a half. Yeah.
So there was some good news this morning, though.
Yeah, there was. DACA, right? Was
Right.
upheld?
Oh, that's great.
Supreme Court.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just in case you were busy in the studio.
Yeah.
and missed it.
No, I read about that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Roberts was the
The swing.
tiebreaker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He's come through a
And
couple
then
times
didn't they also do that?
in the last week? So.
There was another ruling last week that was pretty major too, right? From the Supreme
Yeah.
Court.
Yeah.
So
There's light at the end of the tunnel. Not everything.
Yeah.
Not all is lost.
Yeah.
Sorry, Parker, we dragged you into the news. I apologize. That was
Oh
my
no,
fault.
dude. Hey, if I wasn't in here, I'd be out there screaming. So yeah, I'm in here screaming instead.
So, having just made a record for David, and you guys are in the middle of one, it's like, David, I got to say 30 Tigers is totally refreshing.
Oh my
Yeah,
god.
and-
Amen. Hell yeah.
yeah.
You must hear it, because it's, like at least Jon and I came up through, this whole system of, big major labels, and kind of, then like indie started, and we started working for them. But like you seem to have a different concept, and like, where did you find it? Like, where did it come from?
Well, I think because of, I alluded to my background before, in terms of, sort of how I came up through the business. So I think the fact that I'm not, I couldn't tell any one of you people like how to make a record and be credible. It's like I trust, the creators and so, I mean, not that I don't, I've developed opinions, here and there about things, and I'll weigh in, but for the most part, I don't feel the need to interject myself into the creative process, at all. And I think when creators can come into an environment where they feel trusted, where they get to own their work, and they get the support, because, honestly, I mean, one thing I always say is like, nobody ever bought a 30 Tigers record. They have bought a Parker Millsap record, but they've never bought a 30 Tigers record. And, and I think that just sort of designing an ecosystem around the realization that the artist and their work is the, indispensable, entity in all of that, everything flows from that. And so, artists should then be able to, when they given that they have the, not that it should go to your head, Parker, but artists should have the power to be able to sort of pick and choose. If they're the entity of real value, they should be able to pick and choose their paths to the market and be able to shop for value, for people that have a shared vision, et cetera. And so what we've tried to do is and I don't have anything against the normal sort of traditional label, model at all. But I think in a lot of cases for the artist, they don't need that. The risk that they're subjecting anyone to is really a lot less than probably many traditional labels would lead one to believe. And so it's just a matter of like getting the economics of it all correct, and we've had to have show facility with credit mechanisms to be able to make cash available to make things happen. But I've sort of taken care of all that stuff behind the scenes, and it's been a good thing, and we get to work with a lot of artists. I mean, there's one artist who I'll remain nameless, but somebody who'd been around for a long time and been with labels, and I'd heard that they were difficult to work with. And my experience, and we've been working with them now for 7 years, and I actually asked the manager, I was like, wow, I heard this, about this artist that, that they'd be kind of difficult, but it's like been the exact opposite. And they were like, well, because everything is happening, as it should, and we have control, and we get your advice and your hard work, but like, we're ultimately in control. So what do we have to complain about? It's great. This is what, what we want. And so if it can,
I love that.
Yeah, if it can be a good environment, and of course, going into a working relationship, it's important that we make sure that we have a shared vision about how the music should be taken out into the world. And every work of art, there's fans will develop an emotional relationship to the work of art, and through a number of works, with the artist, and so, we're very much trying to figure out all the time, how do we explain the emotional relationship that potential fans are going to have with the artist and their music, and in that sort of initial discussions about how we do that, we get to find out, okay, well, are we on the same page? And then we can kind of put the economics of rolling out a shared vision about how to approach this out there. I mean, I just think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm proud, and I work with a great team of people. I mean, really, I couldn't trade them for anything. So
yes, amen.
Well, I'm very connected,
totally,
in a sense, because my wife Sharon manages Sunvolt.
Mm-hmm.
He was on your label for how long now? I think it's like
5 years,
4 records, right?
Yeah. I think it's been about 5 years now. So,
and then
I love that band.
And then so she works from home, so I know what's going on with that, and I've worked on a bunch of those Sunvolt records, but she's so happy whenever we talk about the label. She loves being with you guys, because there's never a like, oh god damn it, this it's always like, you guys have been so great, and Jay's really happy, and he's been on Warner's, he's been on a bunch of labels, he's been making records 25 years, so he's he seems really, really happy. I think you guys just do, it's very, I mean, everybody says artist friendly, but this is super really.
Well, I mean, we're friendly enough that we never own anyone's work, or we don't license anyone's work. We really approach it. And I know this, can seem, I mean, I look at it this way, we didn't create the work. We don't own the work. Our only utility is being there in a position of service, and so I tell my staff there all the time, we're there to serve, and that's our job. This isn't about us. I think in a lot of the more traditional systems, the bigger companies, and again, I have a very close relationship with Sony, and I love them, and I think they're incredibly honorable people. I wouldn't, I love my working relationship, but there is, I think that there is a sense sometimes about those larger companies that the artists and their work are really grist for the mill. The perpetuation of the monolith is that's the
goal.
That's the goal. That's the key thing. And it's not necessarily about, the artists and their needs. And so it's just I think a little bit of a different way to think about it. But we've been doing this. February will be our 20th anniversary. It's hard to believe that we've been doing it for years now. But
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So David, how does that happen with you guys? I'm sure it probably obviously happens with different artists, but do you seek them out, or are they approaching you, or how does that
all of the
work?
above? It can happen, in any way. I mean, we definitely, we try to stay very present with managers, with attorneys, and just artists. I'll go to Folk Alliance every year, which has been a big. That's where I met Parker, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't see many other people that do what I do. In the showcase rooms at 1:30 in the morning, and so I definitely try to put in the work and I trust my instincts on it. And when an artist that I feel is particularly special comes along, we try to bring them into the family, and it's worked, and this has been a great relationship. I mean, I think I met Parker when I was 19.
I was 19. Yeah.
So like last year.
Yeah, exactly. 2 years ago. Boom.
It's amazing. The thing about 30 Tigers that I love so much as a manager, I mean, many things, but like you sort of get the best of both worlds. There's a really knowledgeable staff, with a lot of different people who have expertise and who are really invested in every project. They're there for you. You can pick up the phone and they're there, and you also have the ownership and the sort of financial freedom that ownership brings to your client. And I think the other thing that's cool about it is because of the ownership, it requires of a musician, an artist, to like learn about this stuff, learn about how royalties work and where they're coming from. And they learn about how a marketing plan is built, and they learn about, the manufacturing process and how you get vinyl made. And I think having that knowledge makes the business part of it less scary, and so Parker's never, Parker has all that knowledge now. And so he's never coming to me being like, well, I don't know, this doesn't make sense. Did they not, pay me enough on this or whatever? Or how are we going to get that done? Are they making decisions without me? It's like he's involved in every single step of the process. And so, better off for that, I think.
Well, whether you're an artist or not, it's important to know the business side of the music business.
Yeah.
Just exactly what you're saying. That's commendable for sure.
Yeah, and we try to be as transparent.
You signed off on hiring me? Damn.
No,
well,
I feel
that would slip past us, but whatever. I'm sure it'll be fine.
No, I feel so grateful to be part of the 30 Tigers family. I've never been with another record label or distribution service, so I don't know what that's like directly, but I know a lot of people who have experience with more traditional record label systems, and a lot of them have been burned really badly, and I have never been burned by 30 Tigers. I've only been supported, and I feel like 30 Tigers, the model and the approach, allows for working artists to work, but they also provide a platform that's scalable. Like if you do have a big success, they're there and ready to like help you build that up. But if you don't sell 1 billion records, you can still make a living, and you don't have to quit music because I don't know, Warner won't sign you or whatever it is, or some suit doesn't think that your music is viable.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, I mean, I do have to since, I mean, our margins are a lot smaller. I mean, the breakdown, artists would generally get, in and around 75% of the gross. We'll split 25% with the orchard. And so, we're working on pretty thin margins. So like, I do have to sense that there's, viability there. I mean, we do have a finite amount of release slots that we can, we can effectively work artists. If we overfill the boat, then it's not going to go, particularly well. So, I mean, I will, right. I mean, I curate, and it's definitely not open for all comers for sure.
No, and I didn't mean to imply that at all.
No.
It's created a nice space for like a musical middle class in my mind, I mean, and obviously 30 Tigers has artists who are wildly successful and who belong in that sort of top tier of success also. But, I think it's seemingly, in the past, there were a lot of people who either were, slinging pizza on the side while playing gigs, or were multimillionaires, with platinum records. And now more and more, it seems like there are being spaces opened up for people in the middle who are, touring regularly, who don't have to have a day job, and who might make some money off selling records or streaming records now.
Yeah.
But David, those figures that, like 20 years ago, did you come out of the box with this concept, or did you learn as it went? Or
I think I think the basic idea was there. I'd say probably within a year to a year and a half after starting. It was just that we started off as, I mean, and it kind of came to us, a little bit, I don't want to say by accident, but basically we started out as a straight consultancy. So we would help artists think through their demand creation plan and explain that demand creation plan to the supply chain, whether it's the accounts, the distributors, or whatever. We were sort of a sales and marketing team for hire. And then Red, which is Sony's fully owned distribution arm, independent distribution arm, approached us and said, we love the work you do, and you really prepare our sales reps to, to really succeed when they, go in there. We want you to bring everything through us. And this was a year before iTunes. So if you didn't have physical distribution, you were just dead in the water. And so, I reasoned that, like, okay, well, if we can, basically, if we did a deal with them, with Red, and then we signed acts to deals, then we would have the decision making. We could go to somebody like Parker and say, we can get you distribution, and it wasn't so much like, they didn't have to. And for individual artists, that was a tough thing, because no matter how big the artist is, like if you're going to an independent distributor and they have to do a separate contract for you, they have to handle accounting for you, just as an individual act, that's a tough thing for someone to say yes to. So that aggregator that kind of fits into the middle can play a really vital role, as long as they're priced appropriately, where the act can gain access to worldwide distribution, and have a support network behind them. But then, it would be hard, I think, to do that. I mean, to go into a distributor, at least back then it certainly was, and just roll in as an individual act and get your own deal, that just, so this is a way that allows artists to keep ownership of their work, get the support, but also be able to access, in the case of working with us, the Orchard's distribution network, which is absolutely at like a worldwide, international, like the Mavericks, who recorded with you guys, Rolff. They just did we're putting out a Spanish language record, and thanks to the Orchard, we're having conversations in about promoting them in Mexico, Colombia, Spain. We just found out that we're going to be on they're going to be debuting on a Spanish radio station that reaches like 3 million people.
Wow.
On their morning show. So and these are all connections that we're able to help get to through our relationship with the Orchard. So it's really it's a good setup, good situation.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Those guys are a blast every time they come here. It's just
Man.
they truly bring the family. I mean, they just move in. It's pretty awesome. It's such a great energy, man.
Yeah, I came in for a couple of those recording sessions too, and yeah, that's that whole that's a good word for it. That family around the Mavericks, that the
totally
band,
is.
all the it's
and the vibe is just like the energy just bubbles out of the place when they're here, man. I love it.
Yeah,
such a good group of folks.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I love the model you guys are working with, and it's just like the sky's the limit. It's so fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
The diversity of the guys that you've signed.
Yeah. Well,
the diversity of the artists is so good, and letting them just giving them creative license and just like, this is yours, this is you,
Yeah. It's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, there are times, like we've done a commercial country joint venture with Sony because, we found it difficult, the economics of it, because, for our business, we try to work on the 30 Tiger side. And in my mind, we try to work on a 10%, no less than a 10% gross margin and a 3% net margin. So that's a very small net margin. And so, to take the chance of rolling, out a commercial country artist. I mean, we had been very successful in developing them, but we never kept any of them because somebody would come along and, like Luke Combs started, with us and Old Dominion started with us. And so, I do think other models, I mean, I love our 30 Tigers model, but, like when we started the joint venture, the economics of it just wouldn't allow us. It was either like we had to, come up with something that was a little more traditional or just not be in the country business. And so, so we're pretty flexible, when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, my preference is always, I want the artist to get the deal that serves them best. I mean, I don't think Parker needs to give up ownership of his stuff. And he's made a good living in addition to, what he earns from us through. He also, is able to go out and tour and all that stuff. And between all of that, he can earn a living,
Yeah.
And to pay Dan, I mean, Dan's expensive. I know how,
It's very expensive.
It don't come for free, so.
This beer does not come cheap, so.
He's getting paid just sitting there.
Right.
Well, and speaking of cool platforms, I did want to point out and bring up Gems on VHS, Tim's endeavor. It's a really cool YouTube channel, and there are several artists who didn't have a platform before and have gone on to get millions of views and grow and grab agents and get record deals after the fact, and really started because of this YouTube channel. It's kind of crazy. I'm curious how that launched and how they. I don't know, just how they went viral in the way that they did.
Well, I think it's good to hear what David was saying. I think we have some similar philosophies, and we've worked with 30 Tigers on some music video productions and loved the light touch. But I think what really stood out to me about what you were saying, David, is how much it's worth going with the flow at this point of the world, and knowing that the industry is changing and that we should continue to be adaptable to how we actually get the word out about new music and how we actually deliver that new music, rather than hold on tightly to old models that require massive radio campaigns or massive PR campaigns. Not that billboards and things like that don't still work, but yeah, we've been able to build a platform that has over 100,000 people that subscribe to it and get that on their phones. And, without anything but a couple dudes and some Zoom audio interfaces and just nothing crazy as far as the investment. And that's certainly the way the world's going, both in equipment required. I was talking about that with John earlier. just that you don't need much at this point to get the audio recordings done for music, and even mixing, things like that. Obviously, taking advantage of something like Atmos requires some overhead, but I think that's true in the space of marketing at this point to some degree too. Is that while obviously large mechanisms and large efforts by a lot of people can make a huge difference, there are more and more grassroots platforms, and hopefully more and more grassroots platforms that are working together well, that there's more of a shift towards rising tides lifting all boats happening in the world, rather than I need to get signed and I need this one entity to push for me. We can create little small communities that lift each other. And I think that's something that social media does really well at this point, is actually allows us to refer people around to our networks publicly. And I think that's something that we should all think about leveraging as much as possible, is how can we publicly leverage our networks and help each other, whether we're, a larger exposure at this point than another friend or not. Those things are cyclical and change constantly.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things too that I've always been impressed by is just the curation element of what you guys did, because you clearly have like there's a kind of artist you have. I think about Lost Dog Street Band or Sierra Farrell, and both of them are incredibly talented, but both of them are like scrappy, train hopping, sort of like old time sounding musicians who I don't think would have maybe found another platform that exposed them to so many people. And both of them, after finding success on Gems on VHS, have gone on to sign with, major booking agencies and, gotten record deals and all that kind of stuff. It's very impressive. Yeah.
That's the curation. I would, is 100% my business partner and the man who started and still primarily runs the channel, Anthony Simpkins. But I do think some of it is, again, to refer back to what David was saying, like getting out of the way to some degree. And that comes down to our recording style and video recording style, where we're trying to get out of the way and just let a raw expression come through a lot of the time.
Hey, Tim, what was that Zoom kit you just had?
Oh, it's a Zoom H6. I'm recording Parker right now with it. He's on he's running to a Sennheiser G4 set for wireless lav, and then I've got a Zoom F1 plugged into another Sennheiser lav. That's my audio right now that I'm using as an audio interface. We love those things. I mean, it's like I probably have under $1,000 of gear here that can create 4 wireless mic connections. Also I can use it as a live stream interface for audio, or I can hook up these different connectors to it, so I can have up to 6 inputs on that H6. It's awesome. I mean, the stuff that's available now is mind-blowing.
Right.
So is the content you're developing or that you're capturing only available on your channel?
Yeah, at this point, the videos are. We've been primarily a YouTube channel, so that audio primarily has just lived in synced to video on YouTube. We leverage other social media to promote back to YouTube, but we're trying to open up to other things. We get a lot of requests for adding audio to streaming, but just we want to make sure we have all the legal and admin mechanisms ready to be able to handle that and make sure that our splits with our artists are like not, those don't become our primary job is bookkeeping. It's already enough.
Yeah. Right on.
But yeah, we'll be broadening things out. We've been slowly releasing digital EPs. It's a little easier to track on just purchase only for us at this point. But it's like I was saying about staying fluid. I mean, we're trying to stay fluid too and keep moving and do whatever we need to do to build an audience while getting to maintain creativity in our own processes and make sure it's fun for us and the artists that we're just playing.
Yeah.
Well, and then you've got, of course, the other arm of your business that does, music videos and live videos and all that kind of stuff. We've been really lucky to have Tim do.
Yeah, we've done 2 music videos.
And then a live video as well.
Yeah.
And of course, now we'll have lots of good studio footage.
Yeah, that's what we're getting right now.
Content.
Yeah, exactly.
Content is king.
We had a good day last week where we cut 4 tracks, and then you did that acoustic song.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all on video.
We got a lot of fun, and you'll be singing tonight, so we'll get a lot more footage.
Yeah.
You guys are getting a lot of content. It's great. It's good to have.
Really
Mhm.
It is.
Yeah, it's been. I was talking to Jon Grau before I came in the studio a bit about how much more I get the requests now to just get content. Nice, they look comfortable.
Just get some content,
get
man.
comfortable
Just
there,
get
John.
this is it. The relaxing content.
ASMR content.
And often it's people don't know exactly where it's going, but we get more and more of a sense of what's needed. And at this point, you really do need just like broad content that can apply to all of your different modes of interacting with your audience. So it makes sense sometimes to, obviously we still produce music videos and those are awesome, but we even try to, when we're producing music videos, build platforms of content around those now that have allow you to promote that thing on Instagram stories, Facebook, where it natively lands in the news feed, Twitter, etc., everywhere you can, because your audience lives everywhere at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This is my 3rd record this year with days of video shooting.
Yeah.
Which it's becoming a normal thing, and I love it.
Common.
It's so you're never in the way, and I've even mentioned things about like what song should we do when you were here. I mean, I feel like it's so important, to get the most out of everybody.
Oh yeah, well, and if you think, to me, I think anyway, if you think about the average music fan, they've probably never been in a recording studio, but
Right.
they know it as this place where, the magic happens and these were made. And so to have a sort of a view behind the scenes of like, oh man, this new record came out, I really love this record. Like, here's me getting to see it being made.
Right.
Yeah.
Special. And then of
And
course,
then the same-
people who've been in the studio and love it and can geek out about whatever gear they see or whatever techniques they see.
Well, yeah, in the same way that sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to reinforce that, I mean, talking about like building that emotional relationship, sort of access to those kinds of things, and people feeling like they're getting to peel the layers back, a couple layers by, if they're a really intensive fan, to have that experience. It just deepens the relationship. And so, yeah, I think those things are crucial. They're so important.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, in the same way that audio technology has gotten smaller or more portable, or easier access and more affordable, video is the same way. It used to be, when I started managing the studio as little as 5 years ago, the video business has changed tremendously, just the whole technology part of it. When somebody say they wanted to come shoot a video, I was expecting a truck and a production crew and all this kind of stuff, and an influx of 35 people or something. Now it's just like they roll in an SUV and they got lights and cameras in the back, and it's 3 people, and they got 4 gobos they set up in the tracking room, and they got 2 guys that are running and gunning through this during the session, not ever getting in the way or anything. And it's handheld cameras, not stuff on a stand or on a boom or anything like that. And the videos look amazing, and they sound, they sync it with the track, and it's a beautiful thing. So Tim, I'm sure you can relate to some of that. And a lot of that go down.
easier on my arms now.
It's pretty impressive.
I think it's important that, as David was saying, you create a sense of intimacy too. And I think a lot of that change in the equipment allows us to create a greater sense of intimacy as well. I mean, I've been shooting our content for this by myself, and that allows me to just integrate into the process and try and stay out of the way. And obviously, as Jon was saying, they've taken into their scheduling the idea that we're filming as well. So there's still a combination that happens to create the best products, or at least to be efficient. But that said, we're all used to seeing influencers who primarily film or photograph on their phones, and sometimes that form factor or even that medium translates to a sense of intimacy better than something that's perfectly crisp and clean and
right,
manicured.
Yeah.
What about, just to follow, what about, like, you know how you don't want to leak your music before it's done? Is there any concern that people are hearing what you're doing before it's actually put out? Or it doesn't go out until...
No, it won't go out.
It won't go out.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think there's maybe like, a 5-second clip of a song that you might catch on Instagram from someone taking a video.
Right.
Jon. But that's okay. I think, again, fans
that
are...
lyric changed anyway.
Yeah. Well, and fans have come to expect, I don't know, it seems like the days are gone where an artist could make a record, release it, go out and play 30 shows, and then disappear for 3 years,
Right.
I think most people, especially because of social media, feel like they feel a relationship with these folks. I know I do. I know that there are musicians who I've never met personally, but I've watched all their interviews, I've listened to all their records, and I've seen them post pictures of like grandma at Christmas. And so I feel as though I know them.
And you print those out and you put them in picture frames and you
so given people hearing a quick second of a song here or there, it is it doesn't feel like it's doing damage. It feels
and if anything at this point, it's the opposite of damage. It's maintaining interest. People are like, wait, what? What's the rest of that sound like?
True. I've been doing the thing this year, like the last 6 months or whatever, the day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've gotten so much positive blowback, except for one person, one complainer. I always have the one complainer. But it really has been good. And people are really, it gets whatever, how many followers I have, they, if they haven't heard of Parker yet, or if they haven't heard of Laura Stevenson or whoever, it gives them a little bit of an idea of what's going on, and you do get a lot of personality out of it.
Hey, Jon, it's a good thing
and I feel like just people are more interested, and they kind of follow you more, which I think is good.
It's a good thing that we weren't doing that like 30 years ago.
Oh, dude.
Day 275.
Right. Yeah, right. Day 4, me and you walking out of the corner bistro at 7 a.m.
Right.
Not ideal. Oh boy.
So what's next? When do you start mixing?
July.
Go ahead.
I don't know.
Oh, you want me? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Like in July, third week in July. Sorry. Yeah. No, we're gonna take a little bit of a break, and then they're gonna meet me up at Kaleidoscope in Union City for a few days, and then they'll hang out the first 4 or 5 days, and then they'll bust and move home, and I'll finish all alone. Sadly, alone.
Just Jon in a room full of pedals.
Yeah. Right.
Dream.
Is there like some pedophile joke I could make here?
I'm
Maybe not.
gonna get you a T-shirt that says pedophile.
Oh, that's amazing.
But yeah, and then I guess speaking of, I guess we should think about mastering too. So I guess maybe
Oh yeah,
we'll discuss.
we can talk
Craig's
about that
album.
off the Zoom call.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, there's a couple lyrical changes I'd like to talk to you about.
Oh yeah.
Well, I guess we kind of should get back to work.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm on 10% battery.
I want to thank all you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to see all y'all.
It's been fun.
Good to meet everybody.
And Rolff, thanks again for everything. It's really been great here.
Absolutely.
I love this room.
It's real having you guys
so
here.
fucking comfortable.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Meeting
Awesome.
everybody in person someday. Come up
Great.
to New York.
That's
All right.
And David, I guess I'll talk to you about. Well, maybe you talk to Jon about hearing stuff when we're done with all the recording. Whatever you guys.
Okay.
Want.
I
I'm
trust you.
very excited to share everything.
Whenever it's soup, I'm ready. You know.
Right on.
All right. Back
All right.
to work.
Great to meet everybody.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Bye, guys.